Hi, my name is Aaron Linsdau. I'm a polar explorer and motivational speaker. Today is the anniversary of the moon landing, July 20th, 1969. 50 years ago, humans set foot on the moon from this date. Let's talk about that a little bit. What inspires you to think, is it possible to go to other planets? Is it possible to leave the Earth, the grips of the gravity, and go to somewhere else? Is that even a likelihood? Well, before 50 years ago, people thought, or at least most people thought, it was an impossibility. Just think back, 1940s, I remember my fourth grade teacher, he talked about when he was growing up, he was in the late 40s when he was young, and he said, one day we're going to step on that moon up there. And kids always told him, Raymond, you're full of it. They made fun of him. They poked at him until July 20th, 1969, when, what? How's that even possible? That's right. So let's talk about the inspiration and motivation of that event. But right before I do that, if you wouldn't mind just clicking that subscribe button right in that little corner, that would help me out a lot. It makes it very easy to keep me running my channel. So when you think about how much effort you have to put out to achieve certain things, what are you willing to do and how big of a dream are you willing to dream? When people talk about doing grand things, it's actually much easier to get behind them. Take, say, Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., for example. If he went up to the people and said, you know what, I'm going to go down to Selma and, start a business or something, nobody would have cheered on. It would have been like, some other guy wants to start a business. Yeah, that's great and all, but, and not that exciting. But Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., around the same time as the moon landing, said, I'm going to end segregation. That was a huge, huge vision. I mean, think about that. When former President John F. Kennedy said, by the end of the decade, everybody always makes fun, it's got that New England sort of thing, by the end of the decade, man is going to set foot on the moon. And at the time, people thought, that's freaking impossible, how audacious. Nobody's even gone into orbit. How in the heck are we going to do that? But by creating this grand vision of where they wanted to go, what they wanted to do, all of a sudden it sparked people's imagination. When you think about the dreams and the visions that you have, how big do you think? A lot of times people are afraid to think big for themselves, and it's really a shame because it really takes no effort more than to think small thoughts like, hey, I'm going to go to the grocery store, versus a big thought, hey, I'm going to complete college, to, hey, I'm going to become a doctor, to, hey, I'm going to raise a family. Whatever that might be for you, that's a huge, huge factor. And one of the things about the lesson on this July 20th from 50 years ago is that by having a huge dream, even though it's intimidating, it may seem impossible at first, it is actually much more energizing. Some people might actually get crushed. They'd be like, oh my gosh, I can't even envision how this is possible, and this is all terrible. And yet the bigger the dream, I would say the easier it is to, hey, wow, this is pretty cool, and you could talk to people and you can actually get them excited about it. Versus a small dream, all dreams are great, but a small dream's like, no big deal. I mean, I had the same thing and the same big challenge of, I had the dream that I wanted to go to Antarctica to stand at the South Pole. And I told a lot of people, and they looked at me, are you freaking crazy? I mean, yeah, going to the moon, but, even it was believable to go to the moon. But to ski solo to the South Pole and succeed as being the second only American ever to survive in that kind of expedition environment, and then also to set the world record, which will probably never be broken simply because nobody's going to want to be in Antarctica alone skiing to the South Pole for 80 days. It's happened to most people. They get past the mid-60s, like, I quit. I'm out of here. So that dream for me was huge. But when the NASA crew was working on building up through the Gemini and the Apollo missions and the Mercury, of course, the Mercury, think about the Right Stuff. If you want to be inspired, the movie The Right Stuff, if you've never seen it, man, I wouldn't say it totally brings tears to my eyes, but man, I get choked up thinking those men put their lives on the line to do something that was literally thought impossible. Just like when Chuck Yeager strapped himself into the Bell X-1, dropped out of the carrier aircraft and engaged those rocket engines to be the first person to blow through the sound barrier. I mean, it was just mind-boggling. No one thought it could be done because so many people had been killed trying it. And so that dream of breaking the sound barrier was like, how are we going to do this? This is not possible. People have never done that, and there's so many naysayers. And that's the thing I have to tell you, is no matter how many naysayers you have in your life, you got to ignore them. I have been told so many times, oh, you can't climb this mountain, you can't ski to the South Pole, you can't become an engineer. I came from a school right on the Mexican-American border in San Diego, and man, they had a lot of challenges. Those, poor kids and a lot of the families, they just barely struggled, hopefully, seeing their kids graduate high school, let alone maybe going to college or starting a career. I mean, it was just a very different world for me growing up. But now, having done these things and being a true polar explorer, of actually setting foot on places where nobody's literally sat on, because I took a little bit of a different longitude for a while, going towards the South Pole, it was just such an incredible feeling to have the chance to explore places that people have literally never been to. Now, the men that went to the moon, Neil Armstrong and Buzz Aldrin, who actually set foot on that moon, there's so many worries. I mean, that NASA didn't even believe that they would have enough fuel to land, because, as I recall, they had something less than 10 seconds of the fuel required before they had to touch down and be able to take off. I mean, they were this close, an entire decade of work, to come within less than 10 seconds of not making it. I mean, just imagine you work for 10 years, and all of a sudden, like, oh my gosh, I'm within 10 seconds of not being able to make it. I was just mad. I was just totally mad. There's been a couple neat movies that have recently come out. First Man was really about Neil Armstrong's experience in the moon program. It was interesting and compelling. I didn't really like the filming, but that's my personal opinion. And it was either on Netflix or Amazon Prime. They actually had original footage from NASA that had never been released before. So if you get the chance, kind of surf around and check that out, because it is such a monumental event this day on July 20th. 50 years ago, thinking, you know what? We put men on the moon using slide rules, not $1,000 smartphones, not crazy supercomputers, but punch cards, men and women doing calculations, developing new mathematical techniques. I mean, it was just literally mind-blowing to think that slide rules. I mean, do you even know what a slide rule is? Do you even know how to use a slide rule? Right, just this ruler, you slide this little thing along this plastic bar, and you write some numbers down and you do calculations. Ooh, there are mosquitoes out here. We literally put man on the moon using slide rules, developing new mathematics and new techniques. The men and the women who worked on the NASA program to put Apollo 11 on the moon, the crew was just mind-bogglingly huge. As I recall, nearly 400,000 people, not just in NASA, but the subcontractors, the divisions, the people in the government, everything, 400,000 people were working on how to put a man on the moon and making it happen. It's just, think about, if you put 400,000 people towards trying to solve a problem, what kind of problem could you solve? Think about that. So putting a man on the moon was just one of the most monumental things ever. Man has thought about flight, taking to the sky, going up and flying. Da Vinci dreamed about and then drew drawings, and it was like just totally crazy. But all throughout history, it was never thought until that time, past the 40s and into the 50s, like, hey, you know what? This is possible. So whatever dream you have, dream big, because maybe, just maybe, you might be able to go to the moon someday with your dream and vision. My name is Aaron Linsdau. I'm a polar explorer and motivational speaker. Thank you very much for watching. Please like and comment on the video below. Hit the little arrow, scroll down, check out the links that I'll have, and please celebrate this monumental American achievement of putting a man on the moon today.